Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your hands together for the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear.
Rewritten! Bonnie. That was Bonnie? In a daze, Gregory tried to process all this, the whole world still collapsing in on itself. He desperately tried to shove the thought of James away. Because it wasn't James, it wasn't. Gregory had to focus, he had to survive long enough to prove them all wrong. Bonnie didn't look anything like he had imagined. Not only was he filthy and torn, but he also had an insane, dangerous look in his eyes. Gregory didn't have enough time to process what exactly this meant before Bonnie collided with Monty like a meteor hitting Earth. Freddy snatched Gregory up when the first hit came. Everyone scattered, the clash of the two sending the rabbit and the gator both tumbling into a clattering pile on the floor. Gregory snatched to look back, still unable to feel his body, like he was just a spectator during all of this. Bonnie stood above Monty's crumpled form as Monty held onto his face, his broken face. A punch shouldn't have been heavy enough to break Monty's jaw like that. Even from another animatronic, it seemed ridiculous. With a flash of alarm, he finally located the cause of Bonnie's limp. The weight that he carried on his right arm was a huge, cracked bowling ball. It was much larger than the expected size, each chunk of its surface displaying a different color, as if it was made of several bowling balls crushed together into one. His arm was fitted unnaturally large to carry it, steel cables circling around the bludgeoning weapon to lock it in and keep it steady. It wasn't a conventional weapon that would need to be bought in the outside world. Instead, it was made from anything that he could get his hands on. And Bonnie wasn't finished with Monty. He raised the bowling ball arm again, about to do worse. Wait, stop! No! Several people shouted at once. Freddy let go of Gregory, following Chica and Roxy as they rushed to try and pull the two animatronics apart. Bonnie struck Monty again. Each blow was heavy and merciless, hard enough that Gregory could hear bits of Monty's shell cracking to pieces. Years and years of built-up hatred and anguish were released with each hit, the sound of denting and snapping metal carrying through the air past Monty's cries of horror. Wait, Bonnie, stop! Freddy yelled, grabbing a hold of the bowling ball arm, swerving it away from Monty. Roxy pushed at Bonnie's chest, her singular blue eye flickering, while Chica grabbed Monty and dragged him out of the way. With all three of them together, they were able to haul Bonnie off of Monty. Bonnie struggled and kicked at first, wild eyes still fixated onto Monty with a feral, animalistic rage. Monty whimpered in pain, trying to hold his misaligned jaws together. Bonnie, stop! It's not his fault! Freddy told Bonnie, keeping a tight hold over the hulking bowling ball arm. I see what's going on, but please don't hurt Monty! It's not his fault! Roxy stood between Bonnie and Monty, an arm held out towards each of them, bracing for any advances, her melting face tight with a mixture of disoriented pain. Chica was trying to help Monty get up now, her eyes flickering as she watched Bonnie's figure like she was staring at a ghost. Because, in a way, she was. All of them were, even though Gregory didn't fully understand the weight of his presence. Bonnie put both feet back on the ground, his chest heaving with emotion. Rusted teeth grated together, long torn ears trembling. He still didn't take his venomous pink eyes off of Monty. For a moment, that seemed to be the end of it. Monty whimpered pitifully, curling up with his hands clutching his face, shuddering in agony. And Bonnie was smiling, a triumphant, satisfied smile. Bonnie, how? Freddy breathed out, trying to get him to face him. Freddy didn't seem to be able to contain himself anymore, despite what Bonnie had just done. He latched onto him in a joyful embrace, crying to him, You're alive! Wait, how are you alive? Have you been down here the whole time? They said you were... Bonnie abruptly shoved Freddy off of him, rounding those corroded eyes onto him instead. He wasn't smiling anymore. He yanked the bowling ball out of his grasp, rearing back. Freddy didn't get enough time to dodge. The force of the hit made him spin fully around, landing heavily on his side. Freddy gasped on the floor, staring up at him in heartbroken betrayal. He scrambled up and dodged back as the ball swung at him a second time, the edge of it dashing him across the nose as it swept past. Bonnie almost fell over from the momentum, but managed to recover fast, advancing on Freddy with lumbering steps. Freddy backed away, stumbling over scattered items on the floor, barely keeping out of his range as Bonnie swung again and again. "What are you doing?" Chica yelled, rushing over to help. "Bonnie, stop, please!" Something clanked in Bonnie's shoulder, the mechanisms in the hulking arm twisting out of the way. With a bang, the bowling ball disconnected and hit the concrete floor, forming a small crater. It was still connected by a thick cable to his arm, making the weapon resemble a flail. That thing far outclassed the other animatronics, immediately making this a very unfair fight. Nobody had to say it out loud. They were all pretty sure that they knew what was going on. Bonnie was chipped. Freddy fell over another unseen obstacle, giving Bonnie the opportunity to rear back for another swipe. Adrenaline surged through Gregory, finally registering that they were in danger. It almost completely expelled the horrible truth about his brother from his mind, forcing him to act instead. It wasn't James. It couldn't be James. He could think about it later. He could prove to himself that it wasn't true once this was all over. He couldn't lose Freddy too. Desperation broke up through him, causing him to stumble out into view, crying out, "No, wait, stop, I'm over here!" Bonnie's head snapped around at a sickening angle, those crazed eyes now landing on him and him alone, flashing bright as he recognized his prey. Without saying a word, he turned and lunged at Gregory. No demands, no answers to his horrified family, just unstoppable force. Freddy grabbed Bonnie before he could get too close to Gregory, dragging him down as the rabbit screeched and kicked against him. Freddy's voice somehow made it over the commotion. "No, Gregory, run! Hide!" Gregory was about to run and help, but he was stopped as a pair of hands snatched him up. He cried out at first, then went quiet as he recognized the soft feathers. It was Chica. "Oh, no you don't," Chica whispered in his ear. "I'm sorry, sweetie, but you are not getting anywhere near him. He's chipped." "I know that," Gregory argued, a terrible pain sinking deeper into his chest as he remembered what they had found in the tiny boxes. "He's after me. Just let me go to him and he'll stop. I don't care anymore." No, Gregory, you are not dying for this," Chica said firmly. "You're just a kid, and hey, listen. If you die, nobody will know what's happening down here. Vanessa will just erase our memories again. You can't get caught now." Gregory hated how much sense that made. He shut his mouth and let her bolt the opposite direction with him in tow, diving into a nearby aisle the first chance she got. Various objects surged upwards at them from the cold shadows, trying to jump in their way. A few vague outlines winked back at him, an edge here, a corner there, but the rest was consumed in absolute darkness. Chica's hand found the side of the aisle, dragging along it, knocking several delicate things off by accident as she went. Behind them, Bonnie's distorted shouts spazzed from the dusty corridor. He still wasn't saying any specific words, as if he couldn't hear Freddy in the first place, only putting energy into fighting back in a vicious tangle of rusting metal. "Bonnie, wait, please!" Freddy's voice begged. "Vanessa chipped you. It's the reason why you're doing this. You have to..." A crash cut off Freddy's words. Chica hit something, causing several objects to scatter across the floor, the image of falling bowling pins coming to mind. Gregory's finger was pinched harshly by hers as she felt around, a puff of dust clouding up into his nostrils and nearly forcing a sneeze out of him. Goosebumps gripped him with violent shivers, his legs twitching in the need to run away. Chica tripped over the pins as she tried to regain her sense of direction, lost in the dark. "Please, say something!" Freddy cried. Bonnie's footsteps slowed briefly, and Freddy waited in anticipation, the whole room holding its breath in hope. When Bonnie finally replied, his voice was horribly distorted from wear and tear, pained glitches jarring each syllable, like a record that had been abandoned at the bottom of the ocean for centuries. "I'm not supposed to talk to you." That sent confusion rippling through them all. Before the true meaning behind that statement could be absorbed, the devastating bowling ball arm was swung again, connecting with Freddy head on, who crashed to the floor with a yell. The commotion diluted into silence, dying out. Everything went still. A void of darkness settled around them like a layer of soot. It was like the entire world had been wrapped up into a smothering sheet of nothing. Absolute quiet. He began to count the seconds. 5 seconds, 10, 15. With a plunge of fear, Gregory recognized what was going on. Bonnie was listening for them. Gregory was suddenly hyper-aware of all the noise that they were making. His breaths came fast and labored, heart pounding against his ribcage. And Chica was doing even worse. The hefty animatronic was not adapting well to the darkness, knocking things over and bumping into racks, her stomping feet sending vibrations through the ground. Her terrified breath was uncomfortably hot on the back of his neck, the feathery arm warmers sticking to him like a sweaty coat worn in summer. The only thing either of them could see was the dim orange light of her eyes, and that was hardly a replacement for a flashlight. Chica finally stopped, setting him down on the cold concrete, her bulky figure curled above him like a mother bird watching over her chick, eyes scanning all around. The non-specific edges of objects stuck out to them unhelpfully, her faint light only serving as a tracking device at this point. His back was pressed to a freezing stone wall, a pile of boxes around him full of vests and jeans. If he wasn't currently running for his life, he would have taken some clothes out of that box and tried to add more layers to himself to block out the cold. He couldn't stop shaking no matter how hard he tried. Bonnie's dragging, uneven footsteps rolled their way down one of the aisles, the scraping of his bowling ball arm grating against the concrete. His shuddering breaths filled the chilling air as he hunted for them. Chica closed her eyes, cutting out the remaining traces of light. Even though that light hadn't helped much in the first place, the fear that came with the sudden blindness made him want to scream and run to Freddy. He didn't, though, instead keeping quiet. Her warm claws found the top of his head, pushing him down so he crouched behind the ratty boxes. She stroked his back a few times, probably trying to comfort him, but he could feel her scaly hand trembling. Bonnie limped closer, the cables in his arms creaking against each other with the heavy weight. The pink light of his eyes flickered behind the outline of a rack, drawing closer, closer. Chica gathered herself and then burst up into a run. She rammed into a pile of empty storage racks and brought them all down with her. The crash of that echoed far into the expansive room, her silhouette recovering, continuing to stagger along. Bonnie's livid pink eyes snapped towards her, filling with hatred. He took the bait, rising from the floor and going after her. Chica tried to keep away, but her shoulder hit something, throwing her off. It gave Bonnie just enough time to rear back the bowling ball, striking at her back. Chica yelped in surprise, falling to the floor. Roxy called out to her. Chica got up, keeping her balance, backing away. The scraping of their feet was only overshadowed by the screeching of the bowling ball as it was dragged against the stone floor like a ball and chain. "Bonnie, please stop!" Chica squeaked out, her voice hitching near tears. We didn't know that you were alive! What happened to you? Why are you doing this?" Still, Bonnie didn't bother to answer her. Bonnie's back was to Gregory, his eyes hidden from sight at this angle, but too close. Gregory felt around in the icy darkness, unable to see the boxes that he was hunkered behind. He slowly got to his feet, trying to find a way out. He found a space and squeezed through it, popping out the other side and hurrying away from Bonnie and Chica. "Please, say something!" Chica pleaded. "Bonnie, just talk to us!" Only then did Bonnie finally reply. The phrase was surrounded by compulsive, hysterical giggles, only adding to the eerie softness of his tone. "What's the point? So you can trick me again?" Chica paused, seeming completely taken aback. trick you? Bonnie didn't elaborate. Gregory brushed against something on the right before hitting his head hard on a beam above him. He groped around, finding solid objects and softer ones, something that felt like a shoe. Gregory tried to keep going, his veins roaring with terror, Chica's pleads and Bonnie's accusations thundering in his ears. A warm metal hand clasped over his mouth. He tried to scream, but it was muffled. Somebody hissed a shh beside his ear. A singular bright blue eye flickered down at him in the darkness, inches away from him. Roxy's paws dragged him down to where she had been hiding, behind a heavily stacked aisle overflowing with boxes. Another set of bright pink eyes terrified him for a moment, but he soon recognized the shape of the scaly face around those 2 points whenever he adjusted to their light. It was only Monty, thank goodness. The metal reptile was crumpled to the ground beside Roxy, seeming to be busy holding his face together. His jaw was dented in an awful angle, many teeth knocked clean out and nowhere to be found. But he was still breathing, keeping quiet on the floor. The sound of an entire aisle falling over sent an electric shock up Gregory's spine. Several more things were hit by the swing of Bonnie's weapon, but Chica's footsteps escaped further into the storage room. Bonnie slowed down, his limp preventing him from pursuing. He headed off in another direction after a few moments of scanning around. Roxy's fox markings fluttered on and off like a dying light bulb in the dark, her form shaking violently in her attempts to suppress her fear and stay hidden. He couldn't stop shivering. He clenched his eyes to block out the pink hum of Roxy, biting down so hard on his tongue that it started to bleed again. He was so tired of this. He hated hiding and controlling his breathing and trying not to scream. He wanted to cry for Freddy, to just keep on wailing until the whole world left him alone. The split-second image of what he had seen in the tiny rabbit suit tortured him. No, it wasn't real. That wasn't James. It couldn't be James. Hot tears dripped down his face. He couldn't do anything to stop them, even though Bonnie was listening for mistakes like this. Roxy's hand pressed down at his back, moving him close to Monty, who was now shutting his eyes to hide their glow. She rose, creeping away to the right, out towards the middle of the room, leaving them against the wall. Bonnie's livid eyes hovered there in the pitch blackness, the jagged outlines of his ruined shell peeking out in a circle around it. He was so close, so close. And his big ears were listening, twitching, and following the sounds of Chica and Freddy. Roxy's claws clicked over the floor, her black tail brushing behind her in a hush as she snuck away. Bonnie abruptly swung the bowling ball again, hitting another aisle. It fell dead in his path, nothing but bowling pins falling to the floor. Roxy's markings spazzed right from shock. Bonnie's head shot up, eyes on her. Bonnie was already clambering over the fallen aisle, swinging the cable and the bowling ball back, about to... Roxy finally let herself go, blinding magenta colors bursting from her as she exploded up from the floor, running away from where Gregory was hidden. She ducked just as Bonnie's bowling ball went arcing towards her, rolling and changing direction. This was probably coming naturally to her, Gregory realized. Maid's fights were her specialty. Fight back, Roxy! Bonnie spat after her, dark stains spilling from his mouth and nostrils. Fight back! Come on, what is wrong with you? He wasn't quite yelling, but he wasn't really whispering either. His voice was just hollow and jittery, zapping up and down between giggles and hiccups like his throat would break if he pushed himself any louder, which, at this point, Gregory didn't doubt. No, Bonnie, you're a friend! Roxy choked out, whirling around. The edges of her ears, her tail, and paws all hovered in the dark like disembodied features. Just calm down and stop trying to kill a literal child, she said, her singular blue eyes still flickering in and out of view. I don't want to hurt you. Yes, you do, Bonnie argued, several more hunks of static clogging up his throat with out-of-place laughter. You did this to me. You thought I was gone for good, didn't you? You thought you could just get rid of me. No. Bonnie trailed off, repeating no a countless amount of times, like he was stuck in a loop. Then, with no warning, he switched right back to fury. Come on, I know you're scared, just do something, please! Bonnie's desperation caused a twinge of confusion. Gregory sank lower to the floor, Monty's quivering tail laying beside him. No! Roxy shouted back, dodging away from another swing with ease. Whatever Vanessa did to you, I'm gonna find a way to stop it, not just... She ducked again, but not soon enough. The ball was brought down vertically, landing right on her tail. She yelped in pain, darting away, running into another aisle clumsily. She grabbed the racks and shoved them in his direction, darting out of his range as he recovered. Do something! Bonnie shouted after her, the twitchy rambling rising to a hopeless plead. Please, kill me, get mad, hurt me, you have to! No, we're not killing you, Roxy cracked out. Just stop, please! Bonnie broke down, falling to his knees. Roxy darted back, forcing her markings to shut off, disappearing into the dark as she slipped into another aisle. Bonnie stayed on the floor, distorted sobs racking him, tearing him up. Please, you hate me! Bonnie whimpered, seeming to drift away in his corrupted thoughts for a few moments. You have to. His gaze rotated around, right in Gregory's direction. Gregory snapped his eyes shut, pressing flat to the gritty floor, heart squeezing in painful bursts, faster and faster. He took a measured breath, another. He had to get out of here. He had to get to Freddy now. He pushed himself upright, while Monty closed his eyes and stayed where he was. Gregory tried to stretch his head up, looking around, alarm digging its way up his spine the longer that he searched. Come on, please, where are you? He finally found Freddy. The bright blue, comet-colored eyes stared directly at him from so far away, a shining beacon of hope. Gregory automatically set off in that direction, both arms held out, stepping forward with an odd sweeping lurch to detect the obstacles blocking his path. Had to get to him, everything would be okay if he just... Bonnie's eyes disappeared behind a pile of something black, his breaths stalling again. Listening. Gregory stopped. The dark room constricted tighter in on him, ears ringing with his deafening heartbeat, lungs burning, sweat trickling down his back. He couldn't stop shivering. It was too cold, a ruthless temperature that seeped through his flesh all the way down to his bones. This was it. Stay quiet. Gregory inched forwards, waving his hands carefully around in the air, finding nothing to reference himself with, trying to stop the quivering in his body. He took a step, another. His foot crunched down on something. Gregory froze up, alarm prickling up his legs. He turned his head. Pink light was approaching, and not from Roxy. The dragging of Bonnie's bowling ball rolled on towards him, his shuddering breaths growing faster. Gregory took several more bold steps onto the cold concrete, only able to hope that he was going in the right direction and not approaching a dead end. He couldn't see Freddy's eye anymore. Come on, please. Finally, his fingers found something. Cardboard. A metal pole, as cold as ice. Gregory felt across the rack, shivering breaths catching in his throat, his heart trying to choke him out. Bonnie's footsteps limped closer, too close. Gregory felt along the aisle, following it. His hands brushed against boxes, glass, metal. He had no idea what exactly he was touching, but he just kept on shuffling along, trying to find his way to the middle of the room. His foot tapped against something. It wasn't much noise, but Bonnie went still, listening for more. Gregory froze up, squeezing his eyes closed, his throat swelling shut. Oh, please. He waited. Bonnie took another step. No. Gregory hurried on forwards, reaching past the thing that he had bumped into. The corridor was going on forever, the patterns of items and racks never ending. Bonnie was only an aisle away now, searching and dragging and limping his way towards him. Come on, please. They were going the same direction now, both outwards to the middle of the room, following the racks. Bonnie was right on the other side of the aisle behind him, following him. Too close. It was too close. He wasn't going to make it. Gregory slowed. His chest felt like it would explode with the scream that he was holding back. Bonnie was right behind him, only an aisle away. More tears trailed down his chin to the neckline of his shirt, mixing with the sweat. Mildew and dust shoved its way up his nose, the scuttling of roaches on the edges of his ears, cuts in his foot throbbing against the cold concrete floor. Please, I don't want to die here, anywhere but here. Don't scream, keep going. Clanking footsteps made him continue. More limping, more dragging, all around him, surrounding him. Gregory reached for the next part of the rack and felt nothing but empty air. He leaned out. Freddy's blue eye came into view only a dozen meters away. He was at the end of the aisle, standing in between the hall and the lines of racks against the door that led to the security office. Gregory held himself back, his tongue squeezing into the back of his throat, numb fingers balling into fists. Bonnie's footsteps had stopped too. Silence pressed down on them both. No limping, no dragging of the bowling ball. Nothing. No, please. The compression in his chest grew too painful. He stuck in a breath. He listened. Nothing. And then, just behind him, hot breath fluttered over the back of his neck, ruffling his hair. It smelled like wet pennies. Gregory screamed. In absolute panic, he bolted towards the blue eye, all of the horrible monsters of his nightmares falling down on top of him, the rusty gears and creaking pistons and gnashing yellow teeth all working as one. And then a crash hit the ground, someone else landing on Bonnie, struggling against him. "Run!" Monty's voice yelled, still shattered and wounded, but holding Bonnie back. "Run! Go!" Gregory made a break for it, overwhelmed with a panic that he had never felt before, not even when the other animatronics had tried to kill him tonight. He tripped over something and took a tumble, scraping both knees open. He got up again, running, still screaming and screaming for Freddy. Run, go, faster! He hit two more invisible things, but both times he didn't feel them, only continuing to run through the blazing black haze that the world had become. Closer, faster! Finally, massive metal paws lashed out and scooped him up into safety. Keep going! Monty was shouting behind him, Bonnie's furious roar cutting him off. One of them hit the floor, the other getting up, but they locked together again in another struggle, the sound of bending metal cracking through the air. Freddy ran the opposite direction, towards the door that led them all here in the first place. Freddy stumbled over many unseen things, his breath fast and tight, holding him close with each tumble and still getting back up, not stopping for anything. Then they skidded to a halt at the door. Freddy set him down, his claws scrabbling across the iron surface, feeling around, finding the handle, jangling it. No! He stammered breathlessly. The fear in Freddy's voice caused dread to flood through him. It was locked. Of course they had locked it. Freddy backed up and rammed into the door, the bang of it vibrating through his whole body. He hit it again, but it still didn't give way. On the third hit, something cracked in Freddy's shoulder, forcing him to stop, curling over in pain. A crash. Several rapid, heavy metal footsteps rushed up behind them, closer. "Look out!" Monty had stalled Bonnie for as long as he could. Gregory and Freddy whirled around, Bonnie's eyes roaring towards them at full speed, the crazed contortions of his face reflecting sharply off the pink light like a rabid predator. "Stay behind me!" Freddy shouted to Gregory before raising his voice. "Honey, please don't do this. We love you. We all love you. They told us you were dead." It was clear that Bonnie wasn't stopping, flickering eyes locked onto Gregory rather than Freddy, the look of a starving animal taking hold. Bonnie, stop! Freddy reared up to meet him in the middle. His arms gripped at Bonnie, shoving him back in something that was almost a hug, the bowling ball losing its momentum with the interruption. They grappled, the pistons and gears cranking through their bodies as they fought against each other. Freddy was much larger, but he was holding himself back, not wanting to hurt his friend. Bonnie clawed at him, metal screeching against metal, trying to shove his way past him, eyes still fixated on Gregory. Freddy managed to trip him up and throw Bonnie back. Both of them fell away from each other. Freddy held onto his face where he had been hit, staggering back to Gregory as Bonnie rose to go at him again. Bonnie's bowling ball hand clanked and shifted, the parts moving around. The cord holding onto the ball reeled back in, securing the head of it back onto the wrist of his arm. Bonnie raised it above his head, chest heaving with emotion, his hateful expression cramping into one of despair. Freddy, move! You know I'll win this! But Bonnie slowed to a stop in front of them, waiting. Freddy reached down to Gregory, picking him up. Gregory snatched his limbs in close, already knowing what he was doing, letting Freddy shove him into his riding compartment. The walls of the hiding spot clanked together protectively, warmth enveloping him, arms pressed up beside his ears, knees folded against his chest. Safe. The tiny viewing screen let him peek out to see what was happening. Something flickered in Bonnie's expression, leaning back. He couldn't see Gregory anymore, only faced with Freddy. He shook his head, his tattered ears flopping as he said, Freddy, let him out! He lifted the bowling ball arm threateningly, but didn't bring it down. I swear I'll break you open if I need to! No, I'm not giving him to you, Freddy replied, unwavering. Something twitched through Bonnie again as he said, Freddy, please, I'll let you go, just give him to me! No! Freddy's back met the door, limbs clamped over his middle protectively, staying strong. Still, Bonnie didn't strike. Please, don't make me do this, Freddy! He didn't reply. He only stared up at him, quiet and resilient. Freddy, please, say something! The hit still didn't come. Not for 2 seconds or 3 or 4. Bonnie just stood there, poised but frozen, an agonized expression wrenching from behind his face as he tried to keep up the scowl. It just wasn't working anymore, falling apart into despair. Bonnie hesitated just long enough for help to arrive. The clanging of feet rushed up behind him, breaking that moment of pause. Gregory watched on in relief as the other 3 animatronics came to their aid. Monty had gotten to him first, dragging Bonnie to the ground, Chica and Roxy leaping up on him as the rabbit kicked and fought against them. Freddy scrambled to get up, leaping on Bonnie as well, the world jerking back and forth as they restrained him. Don't hurt him! Freddy yelled as Monty raised his claws. What? It's the chip! It's the chip! We have to get rid of the chip! Freddy insisted. The riding compartment fell open, dropping Gregory onto the gritty floor. He rolled out from under Freddy as they struggled to keep Bonnie's shoulders down, scooting out of the way, gasping in fear. Open his mouth! Freddy ordered to the others, yelling back to him. Gregory, you have to get the chip out! You're the only one small enough! What? Gregory squeaked, a spark going off in his head. No! As he looked upon the writhing animatronic they held down, Gregory felt nothing but terror and a new, rising tsunami of emotion. It was the hatred again. Gregory's arm bumped against something heavy. He looked back. A bowling ball. 16 pounds, it said. Immediately, his instincts screamed at him to grab it and do what he had done to the other animatronics. This rabbit was crazy, absolutely crazy. He remembered bloody strips of white and pink flesh, black pits where the eyes were supposed to be, swollen, toothless gums circled around the fleshy remains of a sawed-off tongue. Bonnie had been the one to do that to James. Bonnie and Vanessa, he corrected himself. But right now, Bonnie was the only one in front of him. Gregory began to lift the bowling ball, the weight of it making him stagger, a loud pressure slamming up through his chest. The animatronics were still fighting to hold him still. They hadn't realized what he was about to do. He had the chance to smash Bonnie's face apart to end all of this. Kill it, crush it until it stops moving. However, Gregory stopped as Freddy's eyes locked onto him. Their blue glow flickered on and off in a dizzying effect, his ears pinned flat against his head, fangs clenched tight in his jaw. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking to pieces. The absolute desperation in his expression halted him. He looked past him at the struggling metal rabbit, as well as the cracking injuries he had caused in his family's plating. Gregory didn't know who Bonnie was, but Freddy did. Gregory put the bowling ball back down. That wasn't the answer this time. Yes, his mother got to do that to him when she was mad, but Gregory shouldn't do it to others. He'd already seen what turmoil it had caused. Hardly knowing what was wrong with him, he nodded. "Okay, I'll try." Gregory got up on shaky, bruised legs as the animatronics coordinated around Bonnie's thrashing body. Chica planted herself on top, weighing down his struggles greatly, while Roxy wrestled his arms to his sides. Freddy grabbed onto Bonnie's lower jaw, while Monty took the upper. Together, they pulled. Slowly, Bonnie's teeth were wrenched open, the two animatronics straining hard to keep them from snapping shut over their fingers. Gregory approached, feeling like a ghost, inching up towards Bonnie's head. This close, every single detail of Bonnie came into view from the bright pink light of his eyes. The scraped, dented surface of his plating was crumpled and warped from age, rusty trails seeping from the crevices of his ears, his mouth, and his eyes. The jagged buck teeth stabbed their way out of his upper lip, chipped and stained like the spikes of a jackhammer. The wires and gears behind the throat and jaw were pumping and cranking in their attempts to snap his mouth closed, his poisonous eyes contorted into a hateful, agonized scowl, just daring him to try it. Gregory tried to keep his gaze away from those eyes, his entire skeleton already shaking as he raised his hand. His band-aids were still dark from pulled fingernails and scraped knuckles. He watched it quiver above the lining of rusted teeth, not yet going down. Are you sure he's... Gregory asked. Chica and Roxy were working together to keep most of him down, struggling but not losing this fight. Freddy and Monty's expressions were clenched tight with exertion, both of them leaning their entire weight into keeping Bonnie's mouth open. Knowing that it would never get any safer than this, Gregory said goodbye to his arm and reached in. Immediately, Bonnie's jaw surged inwards, trying to bite down. Freddy and Monty yanked hard to prevent him from doing so. And Gregory just kept going, his entire body going numb as he reached in. He passed the rusty teeth, bandaged fingers meeting the back of his throat, having to adjust himself as he got up to his elbow. Bonnie kept trying to bite him in lurches of resistance, several pops heard from either Freddy or Monty's hands. Neither of them let go, and Gregory tried not to think about it, tried to just keep going to find his stupid capsule already. He realized with another wave of dread that he would have to get his head into his mouth to go further, just as it had been with Monty. Please don't, please don't. He cried as he bent down, steeling himself, and forced up to his shoulders in the cutting, tiny passage. Everything became nothing but terror pressing down on him, so much pressure, so much. He found the capsule. Bonnie was trying to bite down again. He could feel his rusty teeth scraping against his ear, only moments away from... No, don't think about it, pull it! He jammed his fingers into the capsule, popping it open, grabbing the chip. Gregory! Freddy yelled in terror, a loud creaking splintering down his metal hands, breaking, slipping. Gregory yanked the chip out with all of his strength. The jaws closed around his head. Entry 5, February 6th, 2063. After 9 Entry 6, March 16th, 2063. After Subject 3, we finally decided to let them name themselves. Before, it was easy to tell Subject 1 and Subject 2 apart, but Subject 3 has a very similar humanoid model to Subject 2, which just overcomplicated every interaction between them. So, I gave them individual eye colors, and they have decided on nicknames that correlate with those colors, since it's now the most notable difference between Subject 2 and Subject 3. I find their chosen names to be kind of adorable. Subject 1 is now Snowman, Subject 2 is Bubblegum, and Subject 3 is Comet. Yes, I suggested that they use their old names, but that seemed to just make them uncomfortable and sad. So, we are just going to use their nicknames from now on. Comet is getting better after the ordeal in the replica. Bubblegum has been helping him recover and come out of his shell. Comet has never spoken directly to me yet, but I hear him whispering to Bubblegum every once in a while. I hope I can make it up to him. That experiment was foolish and inhumane. Even though keeping all the variables the same didn't seem to have an effect, we found a new use for the replica. They love to play in it. Yes, it looks like a pizzeria, but I guess the replica is just the closest thing that they have to a normal household. The three of them made a game. It's called the Night Guard game, where Snowman sticks his head into the office and the others try to sneak up on him. I'm listening to them play right now. I moved my computer out of the office so that they could have room. Even though all three of them are mature in age, they still participate in games like that. It's heartwarming, honestly. They are alive. They are real people, even though they're made of metal. I promise I'll get it right next time. They will be able to leave as soon as the world is ready for them. Victor Miller. Sorry if you guys can hear some weird noises in the background. My mom is blasting her Netflix series right now in the living room, so just ignore that. Okay, woo! This is a very intense episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So, the updated progress that I have right now is that Chapter 23 is voice acted, has sound effects, and it's also edited, which only, leaves me needing to, finalize it once the due date gets closer. So, yeah, in 2 weeks you guys will get to see Chapter 23. I made a new method of making the episodes where I only voice act one page each screen time hour, so I don't, ruin my voice by doing it too much. Screen time hours are just, the hours of the day where I'm able to look at screens. I have to, ration it out and figure out specific measurements of time and stuff so I don't get a migraine. So one of each of these hours I'm going to be allowed to be voice acting an entire page. I just only do one page because I don't want to overdo it and ruin my voice a second time. I can't get disabled in any other way. I have to preserve my voice. So, I still haven't gotten around to writing Chapter 27, but that's because instead I used my limited hand time to draw the picture of Bonnie that you see in the background. So, yeah, the next time I get my hands back where they recover and they're not sore anymore, I'll be doing Chapter 27. So just, it got it got held up by Bonnie's picture. But yeah, things are still staying steady, and you guys will get to see the next episode in 2 weeks. We'll be getting to see what Moon's been doing up. we'll be getting to see what Moon's been up to during all of this, and it's not pretty. So yeah, see you then. Bye. Woo.